I am rectangular. I feel it in my bones. I am rectangular. I feel no hole. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And today we are having an exclusive conversation and interview with musician, songwriter, singer, Mr. Sean Stevens himself, who we have covered on the channel in my Instagram Reels reaction series that you've seen on this channel before. Sean is one of several musicians, I think maybe the biggest and most prominent of all so far, who since that series has started has reached out and reacted to my thoughts on his music. He seems like a generally responsive and self-aware guy when it comes to the reception that his music has gotten. His music is quite popular on Instagram Reels, getting a lot of viral attention on a weekly basis. And I wanted to just basically pick his brain about that, his songwriting process, this recent music-based trajectory he has been on in his life, and anything else that comes up in the conversation. Sean, thank you for taking the time.
Wow, thank you for having me, my good man. I really appreciate it.
All right. I guess the first thing I wanted to ask before we dig into anything super specific is, just how this crossover and connection is happening. I've been on Instagram Reels for a while, and, people's music just happens to pop up in my face on a regular basis. And when I'm just kind of going through the algorithm, your music just by chance happened to do that even before I was on YouTube. I think I might have even said this in the video, but, as I was kind of organically just scrolling and kind of screen capturing the whole thing for a piece of YouTube content, I've already seen your videos half a dozen times at the very least, and just sort of, not only seen that kind of legendary video of you in Times Square, although I don't think it's just the one. You've shot quite a few of the same video of that style, and sort of have ingeniously reposted it for maximum viral exposure. But not only I'd seen that video a bunch of times, but others you had done as well, and sort of seen the reception that you had been getting. So in my head, you were already kind of somebody who had some motion and something going. What was your initial reaction when you saw me reacting to your stuff, on YouTube and talking about it in a somewhat kind of jokey fashion?
Wow, I appreciate it. The reality is any attention a musician can get at this point in history is just lovely. And you do a great job for a lot of independent musicians. And the reality is negative or positive attention, the reality is on Instagram, is dissonance. And that dissonance leads to interest. That interest leads to people looking more deeper at musicians that otherwise wouldn't have looked at them. So I appreciate any and all attention that I get. And listen, you did some posts and said nice things, and you couldn't find a more humble and thankful guy than myself, because you brought a lot of people my way. I really appreciate that.
Okay, well, from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but this music trajectory that you've been on in your life, on social media, releasing music on streaming platforms, so on and so forth, this has been a more recent occurrence. I guess being an independent musician, was that always an aspiration that you had for a long time, even when you were younger, or is this kind of a sea change in your life that came about by some, experience, or, just a change of heart in some way?
No, on the contrary. So I became a musician coming out of high school, in high school.
Okay.
I really wanted to be a musician for the rest of my life. My family didn't want me to be a musician, so I went to university and did a lot of music during that. At the end of university, declared myself as a full-time musician, worked everything I could, made records, did a whole bunch of work. Didn't get a lot of support from family and external, but kept on doing it and grinding as I could. And then started working just so I could support things, had a family, and had to put music down for a bit. And then COVID, being home and writing again and doing things, picked up the mantle, started writing and doing a lot more music again, and actually released a record the old-fashioned way, made the record, put it out. And both people who listened to it thought it was great, but didn't get any exposure, didn't get any visibility, trying to, do it the old-fashioned way, which is play local jazz festivals and things.
Hmm.
And I went, there's got to be a different way to approach this. And it was only a couple of years ago. So a couple of years ago, I found a great guy online, Damian Keys, who made recommendations on, stop thinking about music that way and start thinking about a new way, which is go to where the people are, like go to the watering hole where people are drinking the water, which
Hmm.
was Instagram, TikTok, Instagram, other places. And so I started making the videos, Instagram videos about music. And to be honest, it's been really fun. Like millions of people have heard my music. If I'm in an airport or anywhere around the world, people come up and say hello. Never had that as a musician in the going from club to club experience. So it's been really fun.
When you're talking about that period of time where you sort of like put it down or had to put it down for a bit, like, what years are we talking about? How long was that period per se?
Well, I didn't ever pull it down completely. It's always been in the back of my head, just wanting, like my passion is music, my interest is music.
Hmm.
But I also got pretty good at business and started, built a little business on the side, have a lot of fun with that. And so I would say really was mid 2000s. I, sort of put it down a little bit. And then
Hmm.
by 2010, it was kind of down completely. I
Hmm.
had a whole bunch of like life realities, like a sick daughter and some other stuff that meant I had to make a choice. So I made the choice. And
Right.
then, life continued. She's amazing. Everything's amazing. And I got to this point in life where I can pick it back up. And I would say it was COVID that I started playing and recording again more seriously.
Mm, mm. And when you were kind of like originally sort of grinding and gigging, I imagined this was what? This was like mid to late 90s, early 2000s or something, just like kind of putting the time period.
Yeah, so I spent 97 through 99 in a studio and making a band, blah, blah, blah. And so
Right.
during that, a lot of like me and just a guitar.
Mm,
And I did a lot of gigging like 3, 4 times a week from 2000 to 2005. That's right
mm.
about the time that the music industry was collapsing around everybody.
Right, right,
The
right, right, right.
CD was collapsing, Napster was coming out, and I was still like, sell CDs, make records. Like really in that, like this is the way the music industry should be, and fighting against, the man and destroying, music through online streaming. And then it took me obviously a long time to realize that is no longer the way people absorb music,
Right.
and there's a shift. That
Yeah, I
sense.
mean, sort of getting into that a little bit. Is that something to I guess you've said it, but to dig into it, was that a reality that you feel like you had a difficult time adjusting to, given that as you were growing up, a majority of the music that you were listening to and consuming was either through a CD or a tape or on the radio? Like, was it difficult kind of like jumping into the social media and streaming pool, given that that's not sort of where your formative music experiences happened younger in your life?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I think change shift. I don't know what this is, but I still have this feeling of a record. Like there's this
Right.
piece, there's a series of different songs that all glue together as this intention. I can think of my favorite records as opposed to songs. And now I think there's been this sort of shift. And if you look at the way Spotify wants you to promote things, according to Spotify, as I understand it, it's they're looking for at least 3 songs, one every 4 to 6 weeks on sort of this constant basis. Some people say release a song every week or every 2 weeks and you'll get more traction. And the reality is, as you know, Instagram will give you 1 minute. So suddenly songs, the hooks have to be different and the approach has to be different. And so that idea of the larger record idea, I still have baked into me. Like I want to make records. I think of songs and how they group together in a meaningful way so that they can pass off nicely. Abbey Road. You can't really
Mm.
listen to a song off Abbey Road. It's like you got to listen to the record. But I think that's shifted. I think I'm new to this. You've been around for a while doing amazing things. I'm brand new to this, to the Instagram, TikTok scene, and looking at what is the new way or the new world order of music. And it seems to be like shorter songs, almost irritatingly short. But most people, like millions of people, have heard 30 seconds of one of my songs.
Right.
How many people have transitioned over to Spotify? I still haven't figured out how to get people to go from the millions that listen or watch a short and then move over.
Right. So you yourself have personally had, and I think this is the case for a lot of independent musicians. You've also seen the effect, despite a lot of the traffic and attention that you have been getting, you've had yourself a hard time kind of like translating all that traffic that you're generating on Instagram over to a platform like Spotify, like to listen to the entire thing or the entire album.
Exactly. In fact, do I even think that an album is a thing anymore? I'm still internally struggling with, will we write this in terms of albums, or is the world kind of changing, especially with AI and other things that are changing? And is it really about the song as the ultimate piece? I mean, we go back a couple hundred years, Mozart wasn't writing records. He was writing concertos or, hour-long or 2-hour-long things. And we sort of crushed that down into half an hour to 45 minutes. And that may be crushed even more. And the question will be, are songs in the future only 30 seconds long? I certainly hope not, for the record. No pun intended.
No, I mean, I would hope not too. It's kind of interesting to hear your separation in your mind on this, because simultaneously I know, or at least what little I know or understand of your professional life, you seem like a pretty tech savvy and tech forward guy, in terms of like, your business dealings and so on and so forth, and Tree Frog. Do you feel like, there are kind of two sides of you in that way? Because again, your professional life, it sort of seems to be very kind of like tech based, but simultaneously you seem to recognize what you view as like these negative downsides that tech is having on like the music and art world.
So, what, I wish that I could have a band and play a band and be successful as a band, and make a record and continue on with that logic as what was started 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, and so how that worked. But as a business person, you're always looking for what's happening in the world of business, what's happening in the shift of technology. And so I see that since that shift is happening, I either, don't have anyone listen to my music because I've not approached it in the proper way, or have millions of people listen to my music and just accept that that's the shift that you need to make as an artist in order for people to listen to it. And yeah, the skill set of the music industry as it was in the late 90s is not the skill set of the industry as it is now. I mean, with DAWs and, manipulating music and the changes of, auto-tune and, the one thing after the other. Even the electric guitar is a massive technological shift from playing in an orchestra 200 years ago. So as the technology shifts happen, we've got to adapt to them as quickly as we possibly can and still entertain and find people where they want to listen to or be entertained.
So it's essentially just like kind of about chasing after an audience for you. In terms of like, adopting in a tech savvy way some of these platforms. Something that I kind of wonder about as a content creator and sort of looking at other musicians like yourself as content creators in your own right is, a platform like Instagram. Do you at all, as much success and attention as you have gotten on there, do you at all feel maybe a little bit slighted by kind of the exposure business model over there? Because they are sort of generating millions and millions of hits off of what you do and your content and your music and the stuff that you've made and created, in much the same way that you would expect, like, there to be some kind of, even though it's very minuscule, some kind of payment through Spotify if people were to be actively clicking on your music. Do you feel like Instagram in a way is sort of like exploiting what you do and saying, well, he uploaded it here for free, so we can just kind of like expose it and play it as much times as we want to get people to listen to it and stay on the platform without having to pay this guy a dime? Do you feel like, creators such as yourself, musicians such as yourself should be getting paid by Instagram to have their content on there engaged with?
Wow, you're gonna get me a ban from Instagram at this point. I'm kidding.
I want everyone to get a ban from Instagram. Honestly, I would love millions of bans kind of flying from Instagram to the musicians that keep the platform interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So the reality is the entire life of a musician really isn't fair anymore. That is the truth. Even Spotify, so in order to make any money on Spotify, 1 million streams is $2,400, right? That's sort of the basic concept there, and that's the platform that hypothetically pays you, right? But 1 million streams for an independent musician is a huge amount of streams. Like, that's incredible. I haven't achieved that yet. I mean, in terms of all songs, I think I have. But the amount of the cost to even buy a guitar, a nice guitar, costs $1,000, a couple of $1,000. And so even to be able to make the music, like you're not going to make that money back from the paid platform.
Right.
So the reality is the entire business model that is music, it's got to change. And I think it has changed. I think I've made more money selling like versions of this mug and t-shirts than I've made off Spotify, just
Right.
because people want to recognize me as a musician and they're like, oh, I can't buy a record, so I'll go buy a t-shirt or do something, or buy a sweatshirt or buy recognition.
Hmm.
And I think that as artists, is it fair? Absolutely not. No, it's not. It's wrong. But we're also not paying Instagram a lot of money. I mean, maybe they could share more or give it to creators in a different way. I think Google and YouTube or at least there is some way to make money at that, through that mechanism. And that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
But Instagram and TikTok and Red Note and all the others, they're all just preying on the creators in for the most part.
To sort of dig into what you were just saying there, especially taking into account that you've been making music and have been aware of the music industry on some level for multiple decades now, do you feel like it's, despite the fact that you have access to platforms like Instagram where you can put your stuff up and, potentially like get an audience that you wouldn't have had otherwise, do you feel like it's more difficult for musicians to make a living now than it might have been in like the 90s or 2000s generally?
Well, see, in the 90s or 2000s, I was still working a day job in order to make music work.
Sure.
So not the right guy to ask. I know there were those band members. There were band members in my band who were, I'm going to say, famous in Canada, really, really well-known musicians, and they were still having trouble, paying their bills and feeding their family. And so, when was the last time it was fair for the mid-level or independent or beginner musicians? I don't think it's ever been. It's never. It's not really fair to anyone that wants to be an artist, and I've been fighting that my whole life. But one thing I would give with all the technology, I mean, I have a day job or two.
Yeah.
And I'm able to accomplish all of that, but with Instagram, with those technologies, and with support, I'm able to get visibility for the passionate things that I do around music and other things, and get visibility for those thanks to that. So am I bitter about it? No. Is it fair? No. Am I just using that, finding ways around the way it currently works? Yes. But could I be a full-time musician at this point? No, my lifestyle would certainly not allow for that.
Is that something that you eventually aspire to? Is that sort of like a goal in mind, or do you feel like you're still kind of approaching this and just will continue to as in a hobbyist sort of way, but like obviously putting the drive behind it in order to get the exposure that you want it to?
And those are great questions. I would say this. I have a really complicated, fascinating, interesting life. And not everybody gets to, do 25 things in their life as I have gotten to do. And as a result of that, if the only thing that I ever did again was music, like if I was stuck on a desert island and the only thing I could ever do was play music, I'd probably accept that. But I really am deeply interested in technology and the way it's transformational to life. I'm really interested in other forms of art like dancing and other things. I have lots of different passions. So would I give it all up just so that to really make it as a musician, you have to be 100% absolutely all in, gigging every night, cranking it out. And I did that for 5 years of my life. And it is hard. It is so hard. When you are till 2 o'clock in the morning and you got to lug out all the drums down the back stairs of the smelly place. And then you take it into, put it in the car and the car gets stolen. And, the life of a musician is terrible. I seriously suggest you become a CEO. It is way better as a life because the reality is, there's a little bit more cushions around you to enjoy life, and then being able to be a musician on the side is just. Which is sort of honoring my earlier self. Like I feel like that person deserves to get some credit for all the emotional output that they put out.
Yeah, you don't want to put yourself through that hell again. You'd like to sort of maybe just kind of engage with the music without having to do the amp lugging, without lugging any amps.
I'm not afraid of lugging an amp, and I will lug an amp all day. But it's not even necessary anymore. When you can get, a post that we had went I think almost to 5 million views. That I just reposted you. 5 million people saw us together. The number on that is crazy compared to, going and playing X number of shows, which I'd rather play somebody's birthday party than play, a big show at this point.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about, I guess, like some of the inspirations behind some of these tracks, and obviously some of your biggest and most well known songs. We can start with Rectangular, obviously. Again, I'm not sort of like familiar entirely with the release process of. Not just this song, but also your Chasing Butterflies album. When you were kind of like creating the music during this album cycle that you did, um, because obviously you've been generating a lot of stuff, and in your posts on IG Reels and elsewhere, you've really leaned into this song in terms of like promoting it and generating piece of content after content after content of this song, kind of like promoting it. What was it about this song that among all your others that you've written, you were like, this is the one. This is the one I've got to push. And I mean, and I would agree, with your choice here. Obviously, it's the track that took off. I feel like any other track probably wouldn't have gone as hard. So what about this track like really drove you to be like, I got to push this one. This is the track I'm riding. This is the one I'm really trying to sell to people. This is my elevator pitch.
Well, I think one is the number one. It's not my favorite song. I think I do love the message in it. The idea that I you can accept somebody the way they are. Like people are fundamentally different, and there's been this big political shift in the world recently to make everybody, the same bland, boring sameness as possible. And I love people who are interesting and different and unique. And the people who are interesting and different and unique tend to fall away from society. They tend to get shoved out into the corners. And so being the spokesperson, as the person who accepts all those people and says, hey, come on in the middle and be rectangular with me, I love that as a message. As far as the song goes, like I wish people would go a little bit farther than that one song and go listen to all the other music. I think I've got 100 and something songs on Spotify. There's lots more material there. I, the obvious reason as to why I pushed that, you'll see that the release logic was this. I had decided to make a record, came up with 12 different songs. And the social media people that I had talked to had said, look, don't release the whole record again. That's a terrible idea. Release one song at a time. Release them every 5 to 6 weeks. So I just chose, I'm going to release one every single month. So I released one on the 14th of the month, every month for a year. And at the end of the year, I just wrapped it all up and called it a record. And there was a logic there, which got a lot more traction and visibility and a lot more distance. So in my mind, even though Chasing Butterflies is a record and always was, most people who would listen to it, they were actually all independent songs that came out. And I'm doing that again, starting off with one and building, one at a time. And now I'm going in multiple directions. The marketing hat that I could wear, because I run a marketing company, has basically said, look, you've got this easily memorizable, easy to, almost irritating, I'll say, like everybody now knows it. They're slightly irritated by it. Great. There's some
I mean, yeah, it's stuck in my damn head. So, you've done the right thing.
So I'll do like another song and promote it a little bit. And if it won't get any traction because it's a brand new song, nobody's heard it before, nobody cares. So then I go back to Rectangular and everybody goes, I want to hear that again. That's great. And then they're listening again. And then I give them another song. Like, listen to this one. And I hope, at some point, one of the other songs gets this thing. Now, I try not to write irritating songs. That's not my purpose in life. I'm trying to sort of collect my emotions and put them all in a little jar and then show that jar to people. And hopefully they'll get something out of that.
To maybe get people kind of like hyped or jazzed or digging a bit deeper into the record, specifically Chasing Butterflies, since that is like your latest full length. What is your favorite song off of that album? I mean, I've spun the record from front to back a couple of times. I'll say Magnetic is quite dramatic. There are a few others I wanted to pick your brain about too, but is there a personal favorite on the album of yours that you feel like people would gravitate to more other than Rectangular?
Man, so I actually really love all the songs on the record. There's a few that I like less, but there's a couple. I would say Strawberry is probably the best song on the record.
Second song on the record, Strawberry.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's my favorite song, but I'd say it's the best song. Like just well constructed. Like if I could make another 100 songs like that and nobody listened to them except for my kids and my mom, I'd be happy. But there's a lot in that. There's some other ones like Circle or like Square, which are all kind of like, they were fun. attempts to take off on the rectangular. I love those ones too, and I don't know why those didn't take off. Or Butterfly, which
Mm.
is also one that went really far. I would say that most people who listen to the records say Sunrise is their favorite, and most people called it out as the best song I've ever written.
Mm.
But I don't know. It's complicated. It's like,
Oh,
who's my favorite child? Like, I'm never going to say that out loud.
well, you're not going to hurt the song's feelings, but with that being said, you're talking about, especially with Rectangular, and there are other songs on the album too that kind of like express this feeling of otherness or feeling a little out of place, being different, so on and so forth. What is it about you in your head that you feel like rectangularness represents that kind of like message or idea? Does it have to do with like, I guess like the, metaphor of like, being square, or is it something beyond that?
So I think the thing that makes me rectangular and what rectangular
Hmm.
is that most people are looking for other people who are like them.
Hmm.
And the reality is, I have had a very interesting, completely different life than most people. And the reality is, I'm not like anybody else. And there's a lot of other people who aren't like anybody else. They're not like me. They're just not. It's like the not likes. I don't know. That's the people who don't fit. And increasingly, the world gets more interesting and more complicated, and people have more complicated life. There's more and more people who don't fit, who are not going to dress the same, look the same, act the same as everybody else. And we're going to take pieces of life and pieces of other experiences and have our own magical, magnificent experience instead of living somebody else's life or somebody else's expectations. And so that's, I think, the thing is that if there are other people in the world who feel like they want to have a unique life that's different than everybody else's, then we're going to be best friends. But if they're looking to be the same as somebody else and sort of adopt somebody else's sameness, then I'm happy to be friends with one of those. I don't need to be friends with 200 of the same person, if that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. I guess like in your head symbolically, what makes you feel like rectangle represents that idea, I guess, as opposed to anything else. Like you could have like you could have associated lots of different images with this idea, you know what I mean? But like what drove you to the idea of like a rectangle being like what makes you feel that, or makes you associate that with that feeling?
Right. Okay. So to me, it's obvious, and obviously, I have not articulated this well. There was a meme on the internet for a while, and it was a person. There's a little kid toy with different shapes on it, and it was a person who was putting the shape inside. There's a square and a triangle and a circle and and the kid different blocks, and you put the block in the right hole. It's like, which hole does it go in? Anyway, and so there was a comedian, and I cannot remember her name for the life of me. I'm so sorry. Who's a super famous online comedian, and she is sort of talking about a software developer, and she's talking about a software developer watching somebody use their system being used, and the person keeps sticking all the shapes into the same hole.
Okay, wait, I think I've seen that meme that you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's very funny.
It is very funny. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that idea that everybody belongs in their own hole, like there's a hole and you belong in the hole. So get in the hole the shape that belongs to you. And I'm like, dude, there is no hole for me. It's
Right.
not even everybody.
Okay. The concept and the whole lyric, it's all coming together. It's all coming together. You're explaining, you're giving the context, you're giving the background.
Exactly. So actually the cover of the single is a picture of that toy, which is we put the shapes in the right hole. And I think the realization for me was all of these other people are jumping in somebody else's hole, but I don't seem to fit in anybody's hole. We're really going down this hole metaphor right now. I do speak about holes a lot. Maybe this is where it comes from.
Yes, you do. You
we're
do.
going down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah, rabbit hole. Yeah, no, a different kind of hole.
That's right. So the big question is do you fit in the hole or not, right? And I don't seem to fit in the hole. So that's there you go.
Okay, got it.
You may need to put one of those explicit things on this.
No, it's fine. Innuendo's completely fine on this channel. Speaking of which, since we're on that topic, and we're explaining lyrics, Please tell me on the track Square what you mean by that you're going to be jumped on jump on top like a Chihuahua. Like I need to explain. I need that explained to me. I'm not familiar with that metaphor. I've never owned a Chihuahua. My experiences with Chihuahuas are limited. I need to know what that's all about.
There's another meme which is like I think it's a Trump doll and a Chihuahua. And so if you just type Trump doll and Chihuahua
Are memes usually this central to your lyric writing process? Like, how many lyrics are based on memes that you're just seeing on the internet? I must know.
Where would I get the rest of my content from? This is where all good content comes from.
Okay, so you're saying like it's close to 100%. You're saying it's like close to that number.
Yeah, well, that is, where I get all of my thoughts, is from bad memes, and trying to reposition it. Yeah.
Understood. Okay, so the Trump doll meme, go on.
Trump doll and Chihuahua. So I'm pretty sure don't want to do that right now. But if you type in Trump doll and Chihuahua into Google, you would probably get the sense of what I'm talking about when I say.
Is the Chihuahua mounting the Trump doll?
I think that's the word. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Got it.
Mounting.
Okay. I need to.
This interview has really descended into.
These are your lyrics. I'm just merely asking you the content of the words that you are saying. I'm left
alone. Do you know what I mean? Like just left alone inside the hole.
Listen. I just feel like you're almost like a Prince type figure instead of the gender fluid symbol that he has. You have the rectangle instead of purple. You have green, and you have these very salacious, very suggestive lyrics sometimes that I think need a little bit of exploration. So with that being said, I also wanted to. I would be remiss if I did not bring up we're a big fan of him over here on this channel, and I've talked about his music on multiple occasions. Mr. Jordy Greep, who you've met, big fan of your work, big fan of your music. Obviously, he's performed your stuff live, and I wanted to know, chat would most definitely like to know if in the wake of him expressing enjoyment of your stuff, performing it, linking up with you, so on and so forth, have you had an opportunity to listen to any of his music? Do you have any general thoughts on that? Because I think in a lot of ways he exemplifies some of what you're talking about in terms of like him being the sort of artist who makes an album. His latest record feels like an album. It's not a record that you necessarily just want to listen to one single song out of. Sometimes he's got some very racy and suggestive lyrics too on his new record as well. If you've had a chance to really kind of dig into his music and his catalog, do you have any sort of thoughts and feelings on what you've heard?
No, I love his music. What's interesting is I was introduced to his music not even knowing it was him, well before we connected. I'm gonna say musically.
Okay.
And it's like he's on my top 10 list of things listened to. Holy Holy.
Okay.
Sort of stand out. He likes
digging on Holy Holy, banger, man.
Right, and it's about holes. Holy.
Right. Also, yes, another whole connection.
Not sure if anybody ever picked that up, but he and I obviously have like this like super relationship at some high level of musical rectangularness, let's call it. So he obviously got the idea. He's also one of those, you could not put that guy in a box. It's great. It's like jazz, funk, rock meets, I don't know, like it's all the things. It's like somebody made a brand new piece of food out of a whole bunch of other foods that you could not normally combine inside it's delicious. His music is delicious.
So you feel like you're on a similar wavelength in terms of like, he's just wild and out there, and he's in the rectangle club is what you're saying.
Yeah, I would say he's possibly even more rectangular than me. I like just as being unique and interesting and just leading an incredibly interesting life. And his whole band is filled with amazing players, amazing people.
No, it's true.
Love them all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other, because Chad has asked a few questions about this, are there any other sort of like, Bible type records that you feel like you pull from in your head when you're thinking of like some of the greatest of all time? You mentioned Abbey Road earlier. And are there any other like contemporary artists who you feel like are kind of like devoted to album craft that you tend to enjoy and you think chat might enjoy as well, that you're attracted to musically?
Like that, the idea of like where you deeply want to sit down and listen to a record from the beginning to the end, as opposed to
yeah, either in terms of like favorites of all time or newer artists that you feel like are still devoting themselves to that craft, even though it's obviously not as trendy today in the age of streaming.
Yeah, so I got two answers. One is an old answer. So my favorite record, do you know what? I'm sure you've heard of the Desert Island disc or Desert Island record.
Sure. Yeah.
So you get 10 Desert Island records to take with you. So my number one record is the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Okay.
Like I could just, from the beginning to the end, listen to that over and over and over and over. And
okay.
over.
All right. I actually see the connection. I see the connection.
My second on that list is also Blood Sugar Sex Magic. My third is Blood Sugar Sex. Like all 10 are Blood Sugar. In case I wore one out. Okay. Like if I get to at any point I wore one out, like or I broke one or scratched one, I would need the other 9, the other 8, the other 7 to survive.
Right.
Like
yeah. Backup copies.
I'm like feeling down. I just pull that record out, and I know all the songs. I can turn it off, and I can continue to sing the rest of the record from the beginning to the end. From I'm going to say a recent band. So there's a band that's unknown in my local area called Shoemaker Levy.
Okay.
And they're like they're one of those bands that should have made it, and for some reason I don't know what happened. And their latest record, Phase of Days, like it's just one that you could start at the beginning. The songwriting is amazing. And they are a make a record band. And every song is good. Don't get me wrong. But they think with the record. I talked with the musicians in that band, and they are all remarkable musicians. I bumped into many of them many times, and that I just love that record. Phase of Days is fantastic.
Okay, chat's got that recommendation locked in. They'll look into it. Speaking of the album recording process and so on and so forth, what do you feel like your main takeaways with having completed, released, and had time to digest Chasing Butterflies now? And how is your next sort of like album process kind of shaping up, especially since now you have like this greater awareness of you and your music and effectively like an audience that you might not have had before? Has that impacted your writing and creative process for your next record in any way?
Yeah, so possibly, and this might be a good thing or a bad thing, is what's happened in the last few years of getting a lot of recognition where I had zero recognition before. Right. It's kind of emboldened me to now go off in different directions and be even more genre fluid than I was before. Okay. And that's sort of where I am right now, where if you listen to my music, you'll see that I don't really, this is probably one of my biggest musical failures, but it's what makes me is I don't really have a style. I just want to experiment and play with everything. I want to taste everything, try everything, enjoy every type of music that I can. And so right now I've actually started to work with many different producers in many different genres going different directions. So I'm doing a little bit more. The latest song that I just put out, Masterpiece, and the ones that are coming out now are going to be a little bit more sort of Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel, that sort of that style. And because I love that music, like Peter Gabriel, Us is another seminal record to me. Okay, as an example. And then I'm also working with my previous band from we wrote a record called The Midnight Radio Show. And the concept was because we were getting a lot of college station play, like top 10 on college stations in Canada for a long time. We wrote a record with the idea that you could start it at midnight and play it nonstop till 1 and not get bored. So we even have like the record pieces. So it was exactly 1 hour. And the idea was for that band and I, my drummer, and I say almost like my spouse, because we've been, he's been my drummer and I've been his singer forever. We're going to make another hour-long record. So it's actually already got an hour of music already completed, and I'm just finishing it all up. And it'll be released as a record, as if it is a radio show hour, exactly 60 minutes, that concept. So different concept. And then also working with the drummer from OK Go to do a little bit more, even take some old stuff and work with that in a new direction. So kind of different directions. Now it's sort of gone, whoop, now let's see where this goes from here. And because I'm not gigging all the time, because I'm taking this sort of new approach to music and being a musician, which is because I have kids and because I run a business and because I'm doing other stuff, I don't have the option as easily to go on tour in the same way.
Hmm.
I get to go experiment in these ways, work with different producers, write different songs, redo past stuff. And I've got all this material and all this work to now go think of those records in my head, but still have enough material to release on a constant basis so that Spotify might actually listen to me, no pun intended.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's Beatles style. You're a studio rat. You know, your White Album. You're just holed up in the studio. You're worried about the studio product, which I can appreciate. With that being said, what are maybe some of these different genres that you're talking about experimenting with that you might have not touched down on before?
Maybe this is Mr. Creep's influence on me, but I currently work on a salsa tune.
Hell yeah.
Which is just, it's got to be out there. And maybe some of his band members might come in and, tickle me a little bit. We'll see how that
yeah, that'd be a crazy crossover, please.
Right? That was so fun.
Okay.
Writing a bunch of just solo acoustic stuff as well, having fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that sort of style of college radio style, there's lots of just throw anything at it. The next, I really like interesting instruments. So sitar, if you listen to my music, there's a lot of sitar, hand pans. I like to go in different directions, different, sort of culturally interesting places that I've been, people that I've played with, and pull that stuff in. So I like the kind of world music. So between the Phil Collins stuff, the world music stuff, the college radio stuff, the OK Go, which will be more classic, I think, rock and roll-y kind of stuff, I'm kind of having fun going every possible direction in music.
Okay.
So we'll see where that all goes.
I wanted to ask you specifically about that track, Masterpiece. Not only do I kind of see that Phil connection that you were talking about there, but I just wanted to talk about maybe a bit of a variance lyrically there. I mean, I sort of think to the opener of your recent album, and how there's a bit of there's an insecurity and a sadness there in terms of how you're writing about yourself on that track, and it sort of seems you're in the exact opposite place, with this new track. Is that a result of a progressively changing mindset, a perspective on yourself that you have now that you might not have had at that time? What's to what do we owe that kind of mental shift there?
Interesting. I'm going through this period in my life, now that I've got some recognition in music, I want to be able to honor my earlier stuff, honor my earlier self. And you'll see songs like Mamkulu, which I just released recently, was actually a song, we could get into that, I wrote a long time ago and sort of rewrote a little bit for recent experiences. The song I'm about to release is one that I wrote when I was 17, I think. And I'm reproducing it in sort of Phil Collins style because people have asked me to reproduce it. And then recently, just the ideas, I don't set out to write a song about a thing. I am not that good. That's where there's no comparison between Prince and I. Because he could actually sit down and go, I'm going to write a song about X and then write it. I'm more I've sort of, my toenails grow and I clip them off. And I didn't intentionally grow a toenail. That's what came off the end of my foot. And it needs to go.
That's quite the analogy. Let's just pause. It's quite the visual. That your songs are just being slowly clipped off of your body because you're just growing them.
Yeah, and I collect those in jars and I show them to people. That is
your songs are like a toenail collection that you're showing to the internet in a jar.
Yeah, that's about as close as it gets. No, it's not intentional that way. It just sort of comes off, and I show people. And here's the thing: is you got to be really careful because, and I learned this gigging 20 years ago, when I was gigging every night, and I had to go through the same emotions of the same stupid breakup over and over and over again every night. It is really hard on a musician when that happens, really hard. And so I think that's why a lot of musicians, fade out or die, have to go do something else at some point or shoot themselves in the head, unfortunately, because they just can't handle that anymore. And I get it. But I also don't, the toenail that comes off me isn't I'm so happy and alone, which I wish it was. It's just the emotions that happen to have grown out at that period that are things that are happening to me. So I would just say that in Masterpiece, it was sort of it actually came from a comment that was made from my girlfriend's child who said to her mother, "Mother, you're a masterpiece." I shouldn't say
Mm.
to, you're a masterpiece. And that was just like out of a kid was such like this amazing realization that if you look at yourself as a masterpiece and you start thinking of other people as masterpieces, and the fact that we're all actually a masterpiece in the disaster that we are, it's not actually that far from the rectangular idea. We're all super special in being super unique, and trying to get back to that ultimate sameness doesn't make sense.
Mm. I mean, from the mouths of babes.
Right? Exactly.
Exactly. So, kind of getting into that perceptions, opinions, outside thoughts that people are having about you, about your work on the internet. I want to get into that a little bit, maybe starting from a more personal place, especially when it's come to a lot of the attention that you've gotten recently. Thus far, what has been, I guess, like the reception and reaction from those in your life who are closer to you, who aren't maybe necessarily like based in the music space? Be it a partner, your kids, so on and so forth. Like, what are their thoughts on the amount of time that you're devoting to this and the way people are kind of receiving it on the internet?
Well, good question. So there's a couple of people who are super close to me. My two kids, my girlfriend, my two kids in particular. They kind of watched the musical thing throughout COVID and me release stuff, and sort of nothing happened. And they got to, I think, got to watch. They're sort of the most involved in my music writing. Like I will play a song to them, and I'll be like, "Should I record this?" And they'll be like, "Nah, that sucks." And I go through five of those, and they're like, "Okay, that one, yeah, I'll play that one. That one doesn't suck." And so they're like super involved at the beginning when I first when Rectangular came out and got some traction. There was a lot of haters. There still are a lot of haters, and they were really upset by that. But the reality is, I don't care if some person on the internet thinks I'm an idiot. Why would I? They don't know anything about me. If they would actually sit down and have a beer, probably wouldn't think I'm an idiot. Maybe they would. The reality is they think I'm an idiot because they hear that I'm a CEO, and which is anyone can call themselves a CEO. Like, what does that even mean? So
I suppose that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, call yourself a CEO. You're a CEO. I bless you. What does that mean? So the reality is, at the beginning, I think they found it a little bit hard when they saw that I was being attacked online all the time. But because it doesn't bug me at all, like in fact, the opposite. If somebody feels the need to hate somebody, feel free to hate me. I got wide shoulders. Like it bounces off me genuinely. So why not hate a random guy with green hair on the internet because you're had a bad day? And then if you get all of that horror out of your body, hypothetically, you'll be nice to their friends and your family. So get it out on me. I don't care.
Well, hopefully. And, honestly, like the fact that you could bounce your stuff off of your kids is pretty cool because they're giving you the cheat code. It's like
For sure.
they're letting you know what's going to play well with the next generation, hopefully, when you're uploading stuff. So, I mean, that's just increasing your likelihood
It's very funny.
to hit and get exposure.
Exactly. I mean, my kids are as involved in social as I am, to be honest. They're all over it watching, and like they'll text me like, "Hey, so and so said something." In fact, when you reached out to me, my kids were the first people to go like, "Hey, somebody reached out to you." Like, da, da, da. It's great. I have so much fun. It's like super connected to them. It's really fun.
Well, in that sea of what maybe I've seen is like a sea of negativity on some of your videos. I mean, we know that there's also obviously people enjoying what you do, people who are in the musician space, but just like regular people too, as well. I wanted to know if, like, from your perspective, from what you've seen so far on social media and elsewhere, like who is that Sean Stevens fan? Like, what is the Sean Stevens demo? Like, do you have any sort of like conception so far of like who fits like that archetype? Who's that person who's like actually genuinely connecting with your music, enjoying it, following you, and looking forward to what you're doing next? Who's actually enjoying your stuff and separating themselves from the haters?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I get to meet a lot of people in real life as I walk, literally walking around in different countries. I end up all over the world, and where I meet people, it's always kind of the same group. So it's always Instagram friendly people. It tends to be people maybe 90% are men,
Wait,
which is interesting.
wait,
I
hold on.
think.
Pause right there. Your internet connection kind of like fried for a little bit, and I didn't hear anything that you said. Last thing that you said
Oh,
was like,
sorry.
last thing I heard you say was Instagram friendly people. So take it from just before that. We'll edit out the gap. Just to kind of take that answer one more time.
Yeah, so I think most of the people that are following me are, and as I go around the world, I find all these interesting people, and they tend to be people under 30, under 25,
Okay.
tend to be that age because of the Instagram friendly group and TikTok friendly group, and I'd say 80 to 85%, maybe even higher, are men,
Mm.
males, or again, it doesn't matter. But the reality is, I think what people find is the idea. I love this idea, by the way. The idea that a guy who had a passion in his earlier life didn't make it, but is now in a place where is getting some traction and getting somewhere. That idea that you don't have to give up, that there's a second life for you, maybe even a third life, maybe a fourth life.
Mm.
So if you don't get it now, there's a possibility of you getting it later. I think that's a group that are really interested, like really inspired by the idea that someone can have a multivariate, interesting life. So I tend to attract people who want a more complex, interesting life. So a lot of people I meet, I'm like, wow, this is a super interesting person. They're obviously following me. They obviously like that sort of rectangularness, if that makes sense. So just really interesting people that I keep meeting over and over again.
That's interesting that your story is like
Not sure if
resonating
that's
with
a
people. No, that's stop. That's the answer. It's a good answer. I support that answer. It's interesting that that your story is resonating with that demo of people in that way, and maybe it could be for a few different reasons. I think there are a lot of younger people now as a result of the way things are currently, like politically, socially, and economically, are probably like looking at the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, if we even have that, and thinking like, man, like all my life plans or aspirations I'm going to have to like put on hold or something, or all the things that I like really wanted to, like things are looking so dismal in some ways that I might not be able to accomplish like goal X or Y or Z in the amount of time that I wanted to. So it's cool that you're kind of like serving as a bit of an inspiration for that. And another thing that I find kind of interesting, and I don't know how much of this you get in some of the responses to what you do, but even I get this, and honestly, like I don't put myself out there into the world in the same way that you do. But sometimes even me with like, I'm just going to be turning 40 this year, which I'm sure you think is like, I'm a spring chicken in comparison to you. But still, even with me at my age, if I do anything online, at least like, even a little bit silly, I'll be battered with like dozens of responses, be like, oh man, this guy's pushing 40. Can you believe it? Blah, 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 blah. So there is like this really weird conception that after you get to a certain age, I don't know what it is, like 25, 30, so like you can't have fun anymore, or you can't do anything like creative, or you can't do anything for yourself. You just have to, I don't know, like just be boring and want to die every day. So it's cool that you're, not giving into that.
Listen, is that not what we've been taught as a society? Is you're allowed to have fun in university and you have to stop, and your life has to be horrible until you retire, and then you have to go play golf for the rest of your life, and that's kind of what we've been sold, right? And that's a hallucination. I mean, it's ridiculous. And in fact, the entire concept of life, I mean, people typically only lived to 30 or 40, 100 years ago. Now we're living to 70, 80, 90. We can have 3, 4, 5 interesting lives. We don't have to have one. Which is the case for me, I had to make choices because I didn't have the money and didn't have the ability and whatever it was to put music down for a bit. And now I get to come back and enjoy it. And the reality is, can I go 5 nights a week, gigging twice a day? That is a lot of personal energy that probably won't do. It just doesn't even make sense from a financial growth perspective. But am I going to still make the best music I possibly can and share it with everybody I possibly can? Absolutely. I'm going to do that until I am 1,000 years old.
Sean Stevens, I appreciate you coming through and being an open book and answering all my questions. You're the GOAT.
On the contrary, my friend, thank you. Really appreciate you bringing me on your show.
Listen, we'll be looking forward to whatever you put out in the future. We'll also be looking at any, future Jordy Greep collabs, anything like that will be on our radar. And keep doing what you do. And I look forward to you popping up randomly in my IG Reels algorithm very soon.
Thank you very much. You guys stay rectangular, my friends.
All right. We'll see you later.
You got it.
Bye.
Love.